Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. We're glad you're here. Subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like. We appreciate it.
Yep. Check out the podcast below in the description right now. You can share it with your friends or share it with your enemies.
We will be live this week after Niners camp, so tune into the YouTube channel and the podcast for that. Deebo Samuel's money. What does it mean now? He's got the deal he's wanted. Does it mean that Kyle Shanahan is going to use this guy differently? I think is one of the questions that we'll get asked on Monday. What do you think?
Well, I think we always talk about this in like baseball, like guys don't hit free agents till like they're 31. And then you're like, well, the best years are behind them. In the NFL, when you hit on a mid-round pick, you do extend them after his third year. Happened to George Kittle. It's happened to just all those sweet running backs that were drafted in like the second, third rounds over the year. It happens to a lot of great players, right? They're drafted after the first round. And you're getting a guy, a star player, Deebo Samuel, in the prime of his career. And I do think when you pay a large sum of money, it's all relative, right? It's crazy. Like he got $58 million relative to like quarterbacks. I mean, Kyler just got 160. It just shows you like the difference. Deebo was a better football player in a vacuum than Kyler Murray last year. And a way better guy. They like him. And Kyler gets, almost 3x what Deebo got. But it's just, it is what it is. But you do need, once you pay the guy, you do need him to maintain his level of play, right? You need him to continue, even if it's not quite last year. I think the Niners are looking at minimum for the next 2 years for him to be a Pro Bowl level player, right? The Niners paid Trent Williams, immediate All-Pro. You don't even worry about it. I think you feel Nick Bosa, as long as he's healthy, star, right? Fred Warner's a good example. They paid him. And remember, like half the year, it was kind of going weird. And even he's like, God, I'm not playing that well. I'm putting pressure on myself to live up. And then by the end of the season, he loosened up. And those last like couple games in the playoffs, like this is the Fred Warner that they paid. But ultimately, like I think they would tell you, we need that Fred Warner every game. We need George. When George is on the field, he impacts the game. And to me, when you pay a guy in football, like a lot of money, and that's what wide receivers, tackles, corners, obviously quarterbacks, you need them to sustain their level of play because they're young. Like this is not, you're not paying a 31-year-old, right? Deebo is a young, he's 25 years old, 26, like 26, 27, 28. I mean, that's, look, you and I talked a lot about leading up to this, why Kupp, Cheetah, and Devontae were going to get more money than this crew. Well, because they're 26, 27, 28, 29 years, all those guys were going to Pro Bowls every year, right? Those guys lived up to their second contract. That's why all of them got third contracts. So Deebo and his other guys, McLaren, DK, AJ, all these teams are looking for these guys to maintain that level of play.
Yeah. I think Kyle's going to get asked about this, right? Like, did you and Deebo agree on how to use him? Because Kyle Shanahan said last week that him and Deebo are on the same page. The reality is, I think that Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to give Deebo the ball on handoffs 59 times, as much as Deebo doesn't want to carry the ball 59 times. Not because it doesn't work, but because it puts Deebo in danger in the same way every one of Kyle Shanahan's running backs is in danger. And it usually bites those guys because they die. They run really hard in short areas, and there's big collisions.
I saw Mostert's alive in Miami. I saw McDaniel.
Well, I mean, Mike ain't about to put him through some different program. I mean, he's going to get the same operation there. But ideally, Deebo in space, down the field, even some bubble screens maybe, but away from the big bodies and the downhill hits. That's what's ideal for him. I was thinking about it like an F1 driver, right? Like Lewis Hamilton drives his Mercedes differently than your average consumer drives their Mercedes. Because Lewis can put that thing in a wall, they'll just give him a new one. Now, every once in a while, you want to use the AMG that you paid $110,000 for, John, and you want to open that bad boy up.
I think the guy's a little more than
$130,000, whatever it costs, right? You don't put that badge on the back just to drop off kids at soccer practice. Maybe you do. And I think Kyle wants to use him a little bit more like your average consumer. When he's got to use the maximum capacity of the Deebo engine, he'll use it. But that thing's going to break down if you're using it like Lewis Hamilton. Actually, Lewis's car isn't doing so well this year.
Yeah, they've had a rough year.
Yeah, rough year. But isn't Verstappen in a Mercedes too? I mean, different team,
so
but
might just
Mercedes
be
engine on that bad boy. I thought somebody could correct me on my F1. Haven't watched the show, and I'm like 5 seasons behind, so things could have changed. But I think for Deebo, it's not about we're never going to use you this way. We're always going to use you this way. It's when we need to use you this way, we're going to use you this way. And I think that's part of why Kyle said, let's get off to a fast start, right? We don't want to have to be playing these desperate situations. Like Madison Bumgarner didn't have to tell Bruce Bochy after they won the 2014 World Series, Boch, don't pitch me every 3 days and use me for 4 innings out of the bullpen. Like everybody kind of understood, break glass in case of emergency. That's what we got to do. I don't think Kyle wants to do it necessarily. And he does have another runner this year in Trey Lance. Same situation. You don't want to run Trey Lance 19 times a game, but there will be some opportunities. I don't think it's I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a big issue because they just signed this guy. They can't be running him through heavy traffic 7, to 12 times a game.
Drafted a running back really high who is really good. I think most people in the league value the LSU price very highly. And he's a physical guy, and Kyle might run him into the ground fast. Elijah Mitchell last year, it was pretty clear immediately. You're like, God, this guy's a sweet 6th-round pick. And he was a starting running back for their team whenever he was healthy. So to me, they're running backs. Part of it last year, now, even if they would have had Walter Payton, when Deebo was started having success, like you would have still ran some plays for him in the backfield, right? There is no, let's say Mitchell and Price immediately look like an unreal 2-headed monster. In the back of your mind, like those guys need a breather. You're like, well, 19, you want to run that play we ran against the Packers? It's like,
John, are you sure it wasn't Walter Payton? His rushing touchdown distances, 16 yards, 10 yards, 27 yards, 3 yards, 20 yards, 25 yards, 8 yards, 13 yards. Those are.
Well, here's the thing with Deebo. He is not Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp out there running 9 routes on the route tree. When I think of Deebo, he runs like an out, a slant, and he can kind of go deep and some digs and ends. But I don't view him as just like this route technician. And listen, part of being a good football player is always looking to improve, adding to your arsenal, improving as a route runner, and you become more of a dominant outside wide receiver. Because the one thing he has, right, no one questions his hands. If he's open, throw it to him. He can catch it all. It's just, do you feel comfortable running him all the different routes? Obviously, their coach is incredible at getting guys open. But I do think and I remember talking to Kyle about this briefly at the Combine a couple years ago when George's contract was up. And I asked him in a little media scrum, being a big J, you guys are about to pay him a lot of money. Ironically, it's way less than this. It's like, what was George's guarantee, 31 or 34? It was nothing. It's crazy how cheap George Kittle is. But it's like George, the way he plays, and you probably was thinking we're paying him $30 million guaranteed. He can just play like he plays, But it's hard. Those guys, there's no just you run out of bounds because Deebo's kind of similar. When the ball's in his hands, he ain't running away from people. He's like, I'll go right through you because you don't want to tackle me, and more than likely I can break the tackle. So it's just a balance. There's not a perfect answer because when George gets used, what does George usually do? George's going to run out of bounds. No, actually, he's going to take on 7 linebackers.
Yeah,
Yep. And I think both those guys, their greatest strength is also the thing that kind of you hold your breath on. And George has battled some injuries. Obviously, Deebo does too. And part of it is just they take crazy collisions.
Yeah,
they really do. And I don't think you just flip the switch on that. I think that's kind of who you are. But that's what makes them great. Yeah.
It's that desire that shows itself in the physical.
But isn't that why, when you show up with those guys against the Dallas Cowboys, you're tougher than them?
Yeah, that's why you got a shot on the road in the cold against the Packers. You got it. Yeah. Definitely the Cowboys is a great example.
But the Packers is too, because their mindset, their physical toughness and mental toughness, those type players, that shit translates in frigid conditions, right? Yeah. Not every California team, I would say, would translate.
Right.
Just historically, or Southern teams, right? That's a tough environment. Back when the Giants went in there and won, Eli's team, you just got to be tough. And that's one thing the Niners, their best players, their highest paid players are just fucking tough, And it's why you feel good about them kind of in the trenches when it gets ugly. And they kind of play, let's face it, it can be beautiful because they have incredible offensive talent, but they do kind of like uglying it up, getting in just let's just throw body blows. And Deebo's a huge part of that.
Soft teams don't run the ball well, right? And this is a running team.
Yeah.
It's also
why, and we'll see this at practice over this next week. And I talked to a buddy in the NFL who was like, at practice, until the pads come on, it's basically a 7-on-7 practice because you don't run the ball. And now they have those things on helmets. They're being very, very careful, right? It's not an overreaction, but the league has gone over the top since the CTE and the pushback years ago, right? The rules, the helmet thing. The 49ers are a running team. Like Kyle, run defense, and then some cool screens and stuff to the wide receivers. But it's like Trey Lance, they don't want to play like Patrick Mahomes. So when these part of it is like even Deebo's plays are easier plays, a quick slant, a quick out. That then the Yak Bros, he breaks a tackle and goes 30, right? He spins around and takes it across the field for a 38-yard gain and gets tackled on the other side of the field by the safety over there. That's kind of who the 49ers are. So it's like if you just look like Mahomes, and I'm not trying to defend Trey Lance here, but Kyle does not just want to drop back and pass. And that's what practice is until the pads come on. And even Kyle's admitted, like, we can't, it's individual for our O linemen until the pads come on because we can't, it's just, you can't do anything, but it's all over the league,
Yep.
And this guy, like George, I would say, are going to be immediately, obviously him and Ayuk build up a connection, but you just got to rely on those guys for Trey. And luckily their coach schemes those two guys open a lot.
Well, and George hasn't changed the way he plays since he got paid, right? Getting paid is usually feels and is it's a celebration of an accomplishment for what you've done. It's a reward for what you've done is one way to look at it. But if you're Parag and the Niners, John Lynch, it's you're getting paid for what you are about to do, right?
Yeah. We're trying to win the Super Bowl.
This is the bill. We are not sending you this check for the work you did. That money's already been paid. You are getting paid now you just put in a bid. You proposed, we're going to do this work for you guys the next 4 years. And that's what this money's for. And that is still, anytime anybody signs a big contract, right? That's the question. You've been in these meetings. I'm sure that everyone in the front office has like, all right, the player exhales when he gets paid.
Yeah.
The team inhales and goes, the player's like, so that's, I would imagine if you're the Niners, that's still part. It's just with anybody that happens with.
The Niners have had success with their core group, right? The three recent guys. Fred was the rockiest, but it was just because he was pressing. It's not because you feel very good about him. Kittle, immediately, still normal George Kittle. Trent, didn't notice any. Now, Trent been rich for a long time. He just stays, right? And I think Deebo and Bosa, if they just can maintain their level of play, this is one of the better teams in the NFL. And that's where Trey just got to steer the ship. We don't need you to be Lewis Hamilton and pass every fucking car on the track.